I should have been suspicious when the agency called me at 6 in the morning on a rainy Monday. Nobody calls at 6 in the morning with good news, especially when you're a pediatric nurse working in home care. But I had 3 overdue bills, my car was making a sound that suggested I'd soon have a 4th overdue bill, and my refrigerator contained exactly 2 expired yogurts and 1 lonely tomato that seemed to judge me every time I opened the door. So I said yes. I said yes without knowing I was about to enter the life of Theodore Blackwell, a man whose reputation preceded him like a hailstorm, destructive, icy, and impossible to ignore. I said yes without imagining that the little 7-year-old girl with enormous hazel eyes and a smile that rarely appeared would steal my heart before I even unpacked my medical bag. I said yes without the slightest idea that I was about to live the most unlikely, frustrating, exciting, and absolutely wonderful story of my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to that first morning, when I was just Scarlett Hayes, ordinary nurse, with curly red hair that never obeyed, 5 extra pounds I insisted on calling strategic reserves, and 0 experience dealing with financial magnates who seemed to have been carved from marble and ill will. The Blackwell mansion was located in a gated community so exclusive that even the guardhouse had a crystal chandelier. I'm not exaggerating. There was a chandelier in the guardhouse. I drove my 2008 Honda Civic, affectionately nicknamed Warrior because it literally fought to climb hills, down a tree-lined avenue, each tree looking like it had been individually combed. The houses were so large that house seemed an inadequate term. They were residential complexes. They were architectural statements. They were walking reminders that some people lived on a completely different planet from mine. The Blackwell house was the largest of all, of course. 3 stories of glass, concrete, and straight lines that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. I parked Warrior between a Mercedes and a BMW, and it seemed to shrink in embarrassment. I gave the steering wheel a reassuring pat. Easy, buddy. We're better than we think. We had absolutely no evidence of this, but optimism never killed anyone. A woman in an immaculate uniform opened the door before I even rang the doorbell. She was about 50, with military posture and an expression that made it clear she'd already seen people like me come and go. "You must be the nurse," she said, not as a question but as a statement. "Mrs. Crawford, housekeeper. You're late." I looked at my watch. It was 6:57. I was supposed to arrive at 7. There are still 3 minutes left. Mr. Blackwell expects everyone to be at their posts 5 minutes before the established time. Oh, great. One of those. Mrs. Crawford led me through an entrance hall that could easily house a family of 4. The walls were white, the minimalist decoration bordered on sterile, and everything looked like it had been cleaned with a toothbrush seconds before my arrival. There were no photographs, no clutter, no life. It was like entering an art gallery closed to the public. We climbed a marble staircase because of course it was marble, and continued down an equally aseptic hallway to a half-open door. Mrs. Crawford knocked twice, precisely. "Come in," said a childish voice, so low I almost didn't hear it. The room was a fascinating contradiction. The walls were the same immaculate white as the rest of the house, but there was an evident attempt to make it more welcoming. A fluffy light pink rug, curtains with little golden stars, a bookshelf with perfectly organized books. But still, something was wrong. It was a room decorated by someone who thought they knew what a child would like, not by someone who actually knew the child. And in the middle of that impeccable room, sitting on a bed far too big for her, was little Emma Blackwell. She was small for 7 years old, with straight brown hair cut to shoulder length and those huge eyes that seemed to have already seen too much. She wore pink cotton pajamas with little sheep. But the way she was sitting, spine straight, hands in her lap, was that of someone in a business meeting, not a child in her own bed. In her lap was a thick book about astronomy, not a children's book, a real book, with photographs from the Hubble telescope and dense texts. "Hi, Emma," I said, entering the room with my best smile. "My name is Scarlett. I'm going to take care of you for a while." She examined me with disconcerting seriousness, as if calculating whether I passed some invisible test. "You're the 5th, she said finally. 5th? 5th nurse in 6 months. Oh, great. That explained a lot. Before I could respond, the door opened completely, and he walked in. Theodore Blackwell was exactly like the photos in business magazines, only worse. Because the photos couldn't capture the man's physical presence, the way he seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the environment just by existing. Tall, broad shoulders, dark gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, black hair perfectly slicked back. And those eyes. Good Lord, those eyes. They were stormy gray, cold as ice, and evaluated me with the same emotion someone would use to examine a piece of furniture they were considering buying. "Miss Hayes," he said, deep voice without any inflection of human warmth. "I see you've arrived. Almost on time." And that was what irritated me. Not the tone, not the arrogance, but the almost, said with such subtle disdain that someone less attentive might have missed it. I was many things. I was late for social commitments. I was disorganized with paperwork. I was known for forgetting where I left my phone while talking on it. But when it came to work, when it came to caring for sick children, I was punctual, dedicated, and excellent at what I did. So instead of wilting under that icy gaze as the previous 4 nurses had apparently done, I straightened my shoulders and smiled. The kind of smile my grandmother used to call a smile of someone holding back a curse word politely. "Mr. Blackwell, a pleasure. I arrived exactly at 6:57 for a 7 o'clock appointment. On my calendar, that's called punctual. But I'm happy to learn about alternative time measurement systems." His eyes narrowed a fraction of a millimeter. Behind me, I heard Mrs. Crawford inhale sharply, but then, and I could have imagined it, I think I saw the corner of Emma's mouth curve slightly upward. Theodore Blackwell studied me for 3 more seconds that felt like 3 years, then nodded briefly. "Let's go to my office. I need to explain the rules." Of course there were rules. Men like him probably had rules for their rules. I followed him back down the hallway, but not before casting a glance at Emma. She was still watching me, and this time I was sure there was a tiny smile on that serious little face. Theodore Blackwell's office was exactly what I expected. Huge, impersonal, with an entire wall of glass overlooking a perfectly landscaped garden. There was a dark wood desk that looked like it had been cut from an ancient tree. 2 leather armchairs and bookshelves with books that had probably never been read. On the wall, a single painting, an abstract piece in shades of gray and black. Even his decoration was emotionless. He didn't offer me a seat. He stood behind the desk, hands in his pockets, staring at me like a judge about to pass sentence. "Emma has a congenital heart condition," he began without preamble. "She's had 2 surgeries. She's stable, but requires constant monitoring. You'll check her vital signs 3 times a day, administer medications according to the schedule you'll receive, and report any changes immediately. There's no margin for error." "Understood?" I responded, already taking my little notebook out of my bag. I always wrote everything down. It was more reliable than my memory, especially under pressure. "Emma studies at home with tutors. You will not interfere with classes. She has scheduled times for meals, studies, therapy, and rest. This schedule should not be altered under any circumstances." He picked up a folder from the desk and handed it to me. It was thick, organized with colored dividers, and when I opened it, I saw it contained everything: schedules, medications, doses, emergency numbers, complete medical history. It was impressive and disturbing at the same time, because it wasn't a father's folder. It was a project manager's folder. "Emma's medical team is the best in the country," he continued. "Any medical decisions must be approved by Dr. Richard Hammond. His number is in the red section. You will not make independent decisions about her treatment." "With all due respect, Mr. Blackwell," I said, closing the folder, "I'm a qualified nurse with 8 years of experience in pediatrics. I know when I need medical authorization and when I need to act immediately. If Emma goes into respiratory distress, I'm not going to wait for approval to administer oxygen." Those icy eyes landed on me again, and for the first time I saw something beyond the ice: anger, Disguised fear? It was hard to tell. The other nurses understood the rules. He said calmly, "They didn't last because they couldn't follow simple protocols. I hope you're different." So that was it. He wasn't just being an obsessive controller for sport. He was terrified. My irritation evaporated a bit. Just a bit. "I'll follow all appropriate medical protocols," I said, more softly. "And I'll take care of Emma as if she were my own daughter. But I need you to understand. My job isn't just to check vital signs. It's to ensure she has quality of life. And that means, sometimes, coloring outside the lines of the schedule." "No," he said, definitive. "It means exactly what's in that folder. Nothing more, nothing less." And then he did something unexpected. He looked away first. He looked out the glass window at the garden outside, and for a moment the ice mask cracked enough for me to see the man behind it. An exhausted man, a frightened man, a man who was drowning and pretending he could swim. "My daughter is all I have left," he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear. "I can't lose her too." And there, in that cold and impersonal office, with that impossible man in front of me, I understood. The rules weren't about control. They were about survival. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He composed himself quickly, the mask returning to place with an efficiency that should have been disturbing. "You start today. Mrs. Crawford will show you your quarters. I expect daily reports by email. You work Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On weekends, there's another nurse." "Understood," I said, putting the folder in my bag. "Anything else?" He looked at me for a long moment as if searching for some flaw, some reason to dismiss me before I even started. "Don't get attached," he said finally. "To Emma. This is a job, not a friendship." And then he simply left, leaving me alone in that huge, empty office. I stood there for a moment, processing everything. The Iceman, the too serious little girl, the impossible rules, the fear hidden under layers of control. And then I thought about the overdue electric bill, Warrior needing maintenance, and the way Emma had almost smiled when I responded to her father. "Well, Scarlett," I said to myself, "you've definitely gotten yourself into a mess this time." I had no idea how right I was. My quarters turned out to be a guest suite on the second floor, decorated in the same soulless minimalist style as the rest of the house. It had everything I needed and nothing I wanted. A bed that looked like it had never been slept in, a desk so pristine it seemed criminal to actually use it, and a bathroom with more marble than a Greek temple. The only personal touch was a vase with white orchids on the nightstand, beautiful, expensive, and completely devoid of scent. Even the flowers in this house had no personality. I unpacked quickly, hanging my 3 pairs of scrubs in a closet big enough to house a small family, and returned to Emma's room. She was exactly where I'd left her, sitting on her bed with that astronomy book, but I noticed she hadn't turned a single page. She'd been waiting for me. "So," I said, settling into the chair beside her bed, "tell me about the stars." Emma looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "You want to know about stars?" "I want to know what interests you. And clearly it's not those stuffed animals your father bought." I gestured to the shelf lined with pristine teddy bears that had clearly never been hugged. For the first time, I saw something close to a real smile. He means well. He just doesn't know me very much. That sentence, delivered with such matter-of-fact sadness by a 7-year-old, broke something in my chest. "Well, I'd like to know you," I said. "Starting with your vital signs, because that's literally my job. But then maybe you can tell me about your favorite constellation?" Emma nodded solemnly and extended her arm for the blood pressure cuff. As I worked, checking her heart rate, oxygen levels, and temperature, all perfectly normal, thank God, she began to talk. "Cassiopeia is my favorite. She was a queen who bragged too much and got punished by being put in the sky upside down. But I think she's actually lucky. She gets to see everything from up there, and she's never alone because all the other constellations are around her." I recorded the numbers in my chart, my heart squeezing. This little girl trapped in this sterile mansion with her terrified father and his suffocating rules, dreaming about a queen who was never alone. "Your numbers look great," I said, putting away my equipment. "Now, how about we break a rule?" Emma's eyes went wide. "We can't break rules. Your father says you have scheduled study time at 9. It's only 8:15. That gives us 45 minutes of unscheduled time. Technically, we're in a loophole." "What kind of loophole?" She leaned forward, and I saw a spark of something I'd bet hadn't appeared in this room for a long time. Mischief. The kind where we go outside to the garden and look at where Cassiopeia will be tonight. Fresh air is medically recommended, so really I'm just doing my job exceptionally well. Emma bit her lip, torn between obedience and desire. "Mrs. Crawford will tell father." "Mrs. Crawford is in the kitchen. I saw the schedule your father made. She does inventory until 9:30 on Mondays. We'll be back before anyone notices." I held out my hand. Emma stared at it for a long moment, then slowly placed her small hand in mine. Victory. The garden was as meticulously maintained as everything else, but at least it had life. Actual flowers with actual scents, a fountain with water that moved, birds that hadn't been told they needed to follow a schedule. Emma tilted her face up to the morning sun, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "How long has it been since you've been outside?" I asked carefully. 3 weeks. Father worries about pollen and temperature changes and air quality and— "Emma," I interrupted gently, "you're not made of glass. You have a strong heart that's been fixed twice by brilliant doctors. You're tougher than your father thinks." She opened her eyes and looked at me with such desperate hope that I wanted to march back into that office and shake Theodore Blackwell until some sense fell out. "Really? Really? Now show me where you think Cassiopeia would be." We spent 35 glorious minutes outside. Emma showed me her favorite rosebush, taught me the scientific names of 3 different flowers, and laughed, actually laughed, when a butterfly landed on my head. The sound was rusty, like she was out of practice, but it was real. We made it back to her room with 8 minutes to spare. Emma was slightly flushed from the sun, her eyes brighter than they'd been all morning. "Miss Scarlett?" she said as I helped her wash her hands. "Thank you." "For what, sweetheart?" "For not treating me like I'm dying." The words hit me like a physical blow. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door, and Mrs. Crawford entered with Emma's tutor, a severe-looking woman named Miss Pemberton, who had apparently been informed that smiling was unprofessional. I stepped back, watching as Emma's brightness dimmed, her posture straightening back into that unnaturally perfect position. The little girl who'd laughed at a butterfly disappeared, replaced by the solemn child who'd been sitting in this room when I arrived. But as I left, Emma caught my eye and smiled. Small, secret, just for me. I spent the rest of the morning familiarizing myself with the house's rhythms, administering Emma's midday medications and trying not to throttle Miss Pemberton, who corrected Emma's already perfect grammar with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely enjoyed crushing joy. At noon, Mrs. Crawford informed me that Mr. Blackwell would be working from home and taking lunch in his office. Emma ate in her room, a carefully portioned meal that looked like it had been designed by a nutritionist with no taste buds. I was eating my own lunch in the kitchen when he appeared. Theodore Blackwell filled the doorway, still in that immaculate suit, looking at me like he'd discovered an invasive species in his pristine ecosystem. "Miss Hayes, I received Emma's morning report." I swallowed my sandwich. "And?" "You took her outside." "I did, for 35 minutes, fresh air and sunlight, both medically beneficial. Her vitals remained stable throughout." His jaw tightened. "That wasn't in the schedule." "No," I agreed, standing up to meet his gaze. "It was in the treating your daughter like a human child instead of a museum exhibit schedule. Different calendar system." The temperature in the kitchen dropped about 20 degrees. Mrs. Crawford, who'd been chopping vegetables, suddenly remembered she had urgent business elsewhere. "My rules exist for a reason," Theodore said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm sure they do, and I'll follow every medical protocol in that binder. But Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, your daughter hasn't been outside in 3 weeks. She's 7. She needs sunshine and fresh air, and what she needs, he interrupted, is to stay alive. Something you'd understand if you'd watched her code twice on an operating table, if you'd held her hand while doctors shocked her heart back into rhythm, if you'd made promises to her dying mother that you'd keep her safe. The words hung in the air between us, raw and devastating. And suddenly I understood everything. The rules, the control, the ice. This wasn't a cold man. This was a terrified one, using rigidity as armor against a world that had already taken too much. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I can't imagine how scared you must have been, how scared you still are. But Mr. Blackwell, wrapping Emma in cotton wool isn't keeping her safe. It's keeping her from living. And I think that's not what her mother would have wanted. It was the wrong thing to say." I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. Theodore's face went blank, that ice mask slamming back into place so hard I almost heard it click. "You know nothing about what my wife would have wanted," he said, each word precisely cut. "You've been here for 6 hours. Don't presume to understand my family." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. I stood there in the empty kitchen, my heart pounding, wondering if I'd just lost this job on day 1. But then I thought about Emma's laugh, about the way she'd tilted her face toward the sun, about that rusty, unpracticed joy. And I realized something. Theodore Blackwell could fire me if he wanted. But I wasn't leaving without a fight. I didn't get fired, which was almost more unnerving than if I had been. Theodore Blackwell avoided me for the next 3 days with the dedication of a man dodging a process server. He left for his office downtown before I arrived and returned after Emma's bedtime. His daily emails were curt, professional, and contained absolutely zero personal content. Emma's vitals acceptable. Continue current protocol. TB. No mention of our argument. No mention of the garden incident. Nothing. It was like he'd decided that if he ignored me hard enough, I'd simply cease to exist. Emma, on the other hand, was blooming. Not physically, though her color was better, her appetite improving, but emotionally. The serious little girl who'd greeted me that first morning was slowly being replaced by someone lighter, more curious, more alive. She asked questions constantly, laughed at my terrible jokes, and had started calling me Scarlett instead of Miss Hayes. On Thursday afternoon, while checking her heart rate after her physical therapy session, she said something that made my chest tight. "Scarlett, do you think my father hates me?" I nearly dropped my stethoscope. "What?" "Emma, no. Why would you think that?" She picked at a thread on her blanket, not meeting my eyes. "He never wants to be around me. He makes all these rules, but he doesn't talk to me. Not really, he just asks about my numbers and my schedule and if I took my medicine. It's like I'm a project he's managing, not his daughter. God, this child was too perceptive for her own good." I sat down beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Your father loves you more than anything in this world. But sometimes when people are really scared of losing something precious, they hold on so tight that they forget how to enjoy it. Does that make sense?" "I guess." She was quiet for a moment. "My mother wasn't like that. She used to say that life was for living, even when mine was complicated. She'd sneak me cookies before dinner and let me stay up late to watch meteor showers. Father got mad, but she'd just laugh and say that memories were more important than schedules." She sounds wonderful. She was. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. And after that, Father just froze. Like if he controlled everything perfectly, nothing bad could happen again. But Scarlett, I don't want to be a schedule. I want to be his daughter." I pulled her into a hug, this brave little girl carrying way too much weight on her small shoulders. "I know, sweetheart. I know. That night, I did something probably stupid and definitely unprofessional. I waited until Mrs. Crawford had gone to her own quarters, until the house was silent, except for the ticking of that obscenely expensive grandfather clock in the hallway, and I went to Theodore Blackwell's office. The light was on. Of course it was. I was learning that the man slept about as much as a caffeinated hummingbird. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. He looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face before the ice mask descended. Miss Hayes, it's nearly 10 o'clock. Your shift ended 3 hours ago. I know, this isn't about my shift, this is about your daughter. If something's wrong with Emma's health, her heart is fine. It's everything else I'm worried about. I closed the door and walked to his desk, refusing to be intimidated by his glacial stare. Mr. Blackwell, when was the last time you had an actual conversation with Emma? Not about medications or schedules, but about her thoughts, her feelings, her dreams. His jaw tightened. My daughter's emotional well-being is monitored by Dr. Patricia Chen, a child psychologist who comes twice weekly. I'm not talking about therapy sessions, I'm talking about you, her father. When was the last time you asked her about her day just because you cared, not because you were checking items off a list? That's none of your concern. Actually, it is. Because part of pediatric nursing is treating the whole child, and that includes their emotional health. And Mr. Blackwell, your daughter thinks you don't want to be around her. She thinks you hate her. That got through. The ice cracked, and for a moment, I saw pure anguish flash across his face. I don't. He stood abruptly, turning toward the window. His shoulders were rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. Of course I don't hate her. She's everything to me. Then why don't you show her that? Because every time I look at her, I see her mother. The words exploded out of him. I see Catherine's eyes, her smile, her brilliant mind, and I remember that I couldn't save her. The best doctors, unlimited resources, and I couldn't do a damn thing. She slipped away and left me with a daughter whose heart could stop at any moment, and I can't. His voice broke. Actually broke. I can't lose Emma too. So yes, I make schedules and rules and protocols because those are things I can control. Because if I control everything perfectly, maybe she'll be safe. Maybe I won't have to stand at another grave and explain to another person I love that I failed them. The silence that followed was deafening. I walked around the desk slowly, giving him time to pull himself together, to rebuild that wall. But I didn't let him. Mr. Blackwell, I said softly. Theodore, you're not failing Emma, but you are losing her in a different way. You're so focused on keeping her alive that you're forgetting to let her live. That's easy for you to say. You haven't watched your child. You're right, I haven't. And I can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. I took a breath. But here's what I do know. Emma is strong. Stronger than you think. Her heart is healthy now. The surgeries worked. Dr. Hammond's last report, which I read thoroughly, said she's in the best shape she's been in years. The restrictions you've placed on her? Most of them aren't medical anymore, they're fear. He turned to face me and I was struck by how exhausted he looked. The Theodore Blackwell the world saw was polished, controlled, untouchable. But this man, standing in his office at 10 o'clock at night, looked like someone barely holding it together. What if you're wrong? He asked quietly. What if I ease the restrictions and something happens? How do I live with that? What if you don't, and nothing happens, but she grows up thinking her father saw her as a burden, as a responsibility instead of a joy? How do you live with that? It was harsh, but he needed to hear it. Theodore ran a hand through his hair, messing up that perfect style for the first time since I'd met him. It made him look younger, more human, and my traitorous heart skipped a beat. Stop it, Scarlett. He's your boss. Your impossible, emotionally constipated boss. I don't know how to be different, he admitted. After Catherine died, the rules were all that kept me sane. They were the only thing between me and complete chaos. If I let them go, I'm not asking you to let them go. I'm asking you to loosen your grip, just a little. To have dinner with Emma tomorrow. To ask about her day. To maybe, crazy thought, sit with her while she looks at her telescope and let her teach you about constellations. She has a telescope? I stared at him. The one in her room. The one she uses every clear night. You didn't know? His expression was answer enough. Tomorrow, I said firmly. 6 o'clock. Have dinner with your daughter. Not a formal meal with Mrs. Crawford hovering. Just the two of you eating pizza or Chinese food or whatever normal families eat. And talk to her. Really talk. I have a conference call at 6. Reschedule it. We stared at each other, wills clashing. And then, miraculously, he nodded. Fine. One dinner. But if her vitals show any stress, then we'll adjust. That's how this works. Small steps, Theodore. You don't have to fix everything at once. You just have to start. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Miss Hayes? Scarlett? It was the first time he'd used my first name. It did dangerous things to my pulse. Why do you care this much? You've been here less than a week. This is just a job. I looked back at him, this brilliant, broken man who loved his daughter so much it was destroying them both. Because someone has to fight for that little girl's happiness. And if you're too scared to do it, then I will. I left before he could respond, my heart hammering, wondering what the hell I was doing. Getting attached, that's what. To a 7-year-old who needed someone to see her and to a man who needed someone to see him. I was so incredibly screwed. The next day, Emma was a bundle of nervous energy. I'd told her that morning that her father would be having dinner with her, and she'd looked at me like I'd announced we were flying to the moon. Really? Just him and me? Just you two. No Mrs. Crawford. No schedules. No formality. Just dinner. She'd spent the entire day anxious, asking me every hour if I was sure, if I'd really spoken to him, if he'd really said yes. By 5 o'clock, she'd changed outfits 3 times and was working on a 4th. Emma, sweetheart, you look beautiful in anything. Your father isn't coming to judge your clothes. But what if he changes his mind? What if something comes up at work? What if... He'll be here. I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. Theodore Blackwell didn't exactly have a track record of prioritizing family over business. At 5:45, I heard the front door open. My heart did a stupid little jump that I absolutely refused to acknowledge. Theodore appeared in Emma's doorway at precisely 6 o'clock, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and his jacket gone. He looked uncomfortable, like a man who'd accidentally walked into the wrong house. Emma, he said stiffly. I thought we could have dinner together. Emma's face lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Really? Something softened in Theodore's expression. Really? I ordered pizza. I hope that's acceptable. Pizza is perfect. Emma jumped up, then hesitated. Can Scarlett eat with us? No, I said quickly. At the same time, Theodore said, if she'd like. We looked at each other. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in those gray eyes. A plea, maybe? Like he needed a buffer, someone to prevent him from messing this up. Please. Emma grabbed my hand. It'll be more fun with 3. How could I say no to that face? Okay, but just for a little while. This is your time with your dad. The dining room was too formal, so I suggested we eat in the garden conservatory. Mrs. Crawford looked scandalized when I asked her to set up a picnic blanket on the floor, but one look from Theodore silenced her objections. We sat in a triangle on the blanket, the pizza boxes between us, and for the first few minutes, it was painfully awkward. Theodore looked like he was negotiating a hostile corporate takeover. Emma kept glancing between us nervously. I was beginning to regret every life choice that had led to this moment. Then Emma said, Father, did you know that Scarlett snorts when she laughs really hard? I nearly choked on my pizza. Emma, it's true. Yesterday when I told you about the frog in Miss Pemberton's desk drawer, there was a frog in Miss Pemberton's desk? Theodore's eyebrows rose. Emma's eyes went wide. That was supposed to be a secret. How did a frog get into her desk? He was trying to look stern, but I caught the tiniest quirk at the corner of his mouth. Well, Emma bit her lip. Maybe I was reading about amphibian habitats and wanted to observe one in a controlled environment, and Miss Pemberton's desk drawer seemed like an excellent habitat, and Emma Catherine Blackwell. But he was almost smiling. Almost. We do not put frogs in people's furniture. Even if they're really boring and never let me look out the window during lessons. Even then. But Scarlett said, Emma caught herself, realizing she was about to throw me under the bus. Theodore turned those storm-gray eyes on me. Scarlett said what? That Miss Pemberton could use a little excitement in her life? I offered weakly. In my defense, I didn't know Emma would take it literally. And then Theodore Blackwell laughed. Actually laughed. It was rusty and brief, like he'd forgotten how, but it was real. The sound transformed his entire face, erasing years of grief and stress, and I suddenly understood why Emma's mother had fallen in love with him. My stomach did a slow flip that had nothing to do with the pizza. Dangerous, Scarlett. So dangerous. You two are going to be trouble together, aren't they? He said, shaking his head. Probably, Emma agreed cheerfully, taking another slice. But fun trouble, right, Scarlett? The best kind, I confirmed. Gradually, the awkwardness melted. Theodore asked Emma about her studies and actually listened when she explained her latest astronomy project. Emma asked about his work, and he tried, really tried, to explain financial markets in 7-year-old terms. I mostly watched, jumping in when the conversation lagged, my heart swelling every time I saw Emma's delighted smile, or caught Theodore looking at his daughter with something softer than fear in his eyes. After dinner, Emma dragged her father to her telescope. I started to excuse myself, but Theodore's hand caught my wrist. Stay, he said quietly. Please. His touch was warm, his grip gentle, and I was acutely aware of every point of contact between his fingers and my skin. Okay, I managed, hoping my voice sounded normal. Emma spent the next 30 minutes showing her father constellations, explaining the life cycles of stars, and telling him stories about Greek mythology. Theodore listened with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every word, trying to make up for 2 years of missed conversations in a single evening. And that's Cassiopeia, Emma said, pointing. She's my favorite because even though she was punished, she still gets to be part of something beautiful. She's not alone. Theodore's hand found Emma's shoulder. You're never alone either, sweetheart. I know I've been distant. But that's my failing, not yours. You're the best thing in my life, Emma. The only thing that matters. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? He pulled her into a hug and she clung to him like she'd been waiting years for this moment. I turned away, giving them privacy, swiping at my own eyes. When I looked back, Theodore was watching me over Emma's head, his expression raw and vulnerable. Thank you, he mouthed. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep with a smile on her face, Theodore found me in the kitchen making tea. That was, he started, then stopped. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You showed up, that's what mattered. She was happy. He said it like a revelation. I haven't seen her that happy in years. She just needed her dad, the real you, not the schedule keeper. Theodore leaned against the counter and I noticed how tired he looked, but it was a different kind of tired, lighter somehow. I've been doing this all wrong, haven't I? The rules, the control. I thought I was protecting her, but I was just pushing her away. You were doing the best you could with unbearable pain. That's not wrong, Theodore, it's human. Scarlett. The way he said my name made my breath catch. How do you do that? Do what? Make everything seem less impossible. We stood there in the quiet kitchen, the space between us charged with something I absolutely could not name. His eyes held mine, and for a moment I thought, no. Stop it. He's grieving. He's vulnerable. He's your employer. This is not a romance novel. This is real life with real consequences. I stepped back, breaking the moment. You should get some rest. Tomorrow, maybe you could have breakfast with Emma. Nothing elaborate, just time together. I understand. He smiled, small but genuine. You're very good at this, you know, at seeing what people need. It's my job. Is it? Just your job? The question hung between us, dangerous and thrilling and absolutely something I should not answer honestly. Good night, Theodore, I said instead, escaping to my room before I could do something stupid like admit that no, it wasn't just a job anymore. That somewhere between the garden visits and the pizza dinner and watching him hug his daughter, I'd started to care far too much about Theodore Blackwell and his broken, beautiful family. And that was the most dangerous development of all. For 2 glorious weeks, everything was perfect. Almost too perfect, which should have been my first clue that the universe was about to throw a wrench into our happiness. Theodore started coming home for dinner every night. He and Emma developed inside jokes. He even smiled sometimes, real smiles that reached his eyes and made my traitorous heart perform gymnastics. The house felt less like a museum and more like a home, and that was the problem. Because somewhere between watching Theodore teach Emma chess and catching him singing off-key in the hallway, I'd crossed a line I'd sworn I wouldn't cross. I wasn't just attached anymore. I was falling. Hard. For a man who was my employer, who was still grieving his wife, who was so far out of my league we weren't even playing the same sport. I was a nurse from Queens with student loans and a car held together by prayer. He was Theodore Blackwell, worth more than some small countries who wore watches that cost more than my annual salary. It was ridiculous, impossible, and completely, devastatingly real. I was so busy trying to manage my inappropriate feelings that I missed the signs, the little warnings that everything was about to implode. It started on a Wednesday morning. I was checking Emma's vitals when I noticed her heart rate was slightly elevated. Not dangerously, but enough to make me frown. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" I asked, pressing my hand to her forehead. She felt warm. "Fine," Emma said, but her voice was thin. "Just tired." "Did you sleep okay?" "I guess. Bad dreams." I made a note to monitor her more closely. Kids got tired sometimes. It didn't have to mean anything. By afternoon, her temperature had climbed to 100.2. Still not alarming, but concerning. I called Dr. Hammond, who advised Tylenol and close monitoring. Theodore came home early, his face pale when I told him. "It's probably just a cold," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "Kids get them all the time." "Emma doesn't get colds. She gets complications." His jaw was tight, that ice wall slamming back up. "I want her in the hospital." "Theodore, she has a low-grade fever. The hospital will send her right back home. Let's watch her tonight, and if anything changes, you don't understand." When Catherine got sick, everyone said it was fine, just a little pain, nothing to worry about. And then it wasn't fine. It was stage 4 cancer, and 6 months later she was gone. His hands were shaking. "I won't make that mistake again." "This isn't the same situation." "You don't know that." He was spiraling, I could see it. 2 weeks of progress evaporating under the weight of his fear. I should never have loosened the restrictions. I should never have listened to you. This is my fault. Theodore listened to me. But he was already pulling out his phone, calling Dr. Hammond, demanding Emma be admitted for observation, despite the doctor's protests that it was unnecessary. Emma heard him from her room. I saw the light dim in her eyes, saw her curl into herself like a flower closing at night. "It's happening again," she whispered. "He's going back to how he was." "No, sweetie, he's just scared. He's always scared. And I'm always the reason." Her voice broke. "Maybe if I was braver, stronger, better, he wouldn't have to be so afraid all the time." My heart shattered. "Emma, no. None of this is your fault. Your father loves you so much that sometimes his love comes out as fear. But that's his thing to work through, not yours to fix. Then why does it feel like my job to make him less scared?" I had no answer for that. Because she was right. She'd been managing her father's emotions for years, making herself smaller and quieter so he wouldn't worry. And I'd thought we were making progress, but one fever and we were right back where we started. The hospital admission was a nightmare. Emma was poked and prodded and tested for hours. Every test came back normal. Just a minor virus, exactly what I'd said. But Theodore insisted she stay overnight for observation. I stayed with her, holding her hand through the fear and the boredom and the indignity of it all. Theodore paced the hallway, making calls, demanding additional tests, unable to sit still or trust that his daughter was okay. At midnight, Dr. Hammond pulled me aside. Miss Hayes, you need to talk to him. This isn't healthy, for either of them. I've tried. He's not listening. Then try harder. Because if this continues, Emma's going to need therapy for anxiety caused by her father's anxiety. It's a vicious cycle. I found Theodore in the waiting room staring at nothing, looking like he'd aged 10 years in one day. She's sleeping, I said, sitting beside him. Peacefully. Her vitals are perfect. This time, Theodore, don't. His voice was cold. Don't tell me I'm overreacting or being irrational. Don't tell me to calm down. You have no idea what it's like to lose someone you'd die for. You're right, I don't. But I know what it's like to watch someone suffocate under the weight of someone else's fear. I took a breath. My mother was a nurse, too. She died in a car accident when I was 16. Freak thing, black ice, wrong place, wrong time. And my father spent the next 5 years trying to control everything. My curfew, my friends, my college choices. He was so terrified of losing me that he couldn't see he was pushing me away. Theodore finally looked at me. What happened? I left. Went to nursing school 3,000 miles away, and it took 2 years of therapy and a lot of hard conversations before we found our way back to each other. I touched his hand gently. I'm not saying you're like my father, but I am saying that Emma needs you to trust her strength. She needs you to believe she's going to be okay. Because if you don't believe it, how can she? What if I believe it and I'm wrong? What if you don't believe it and you waste all the good time you have together living in fear of the bad? We sat in silence. Then Theodore's hand turned over, his fingers intertwining with mine. I don't know how to stop being afraid, he admitted. The fear is the only thing that kept me going after Catherine died. If I let it go, what's left? Love, I said softly. Just love, without the fear attached to it. Scarlett, He looked at our joined hands, then at my face, and something shifted in his expression. Something that made my breath catch. These past 2 weeks, having you here, watching you with Emma, the way you make everything seem lighter and possible and... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. I can't. I shouldn't. You work for me and I'm a mess and... Theodore. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. What are you trying to say? Before he could answer, a nurse appeared. Mr. Blackwell, Emma's awake and asking for you both. The moment shattered. Theodore pulled his hand away, that wall slamming back up. We should go, he said, his voice formal again. But as we walked to Emma's room, I felt the ghost of his touch on my skin, heard the echo of his unfinished confession, and knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed. The question was, had it changed for better or worse? Emma was discharged the next morning with a clean bill of health and instructions to rest. The car ride home was silent. Theodore sat in the front, rigid and distant. Emma held my hand in the back seat, exhausted. When we got home, Mrs. Crawford informed me that Theodore wanted to see me in his office. This was it. He was going to fire me. Going to say last night was inappropriate, that I'd overstepped, that I needed to maintain professional boundaries. I knocked on his door, my heart in my throat. Come in. His voice was flat. Theodore stood by the window, his back to me. Miss Hayes, Scarlett. Last night I said things I shouldn't have. You're Emma's nurse. This is a professional relationship. I let my emotions, my exhaustion, cloud my judgment. Each word felt like a small cut. I understand. Do you? He finally turned and his eyes were devastated. Because I don't understand how you walked into my life 3 weeks ago and turned everything upside down. I don't understand how I'm supposed to go back to seeing you as just the nurse when you're the first person who's made me feel alive in 2 years. And I don't understand how I'm supposed to do the right thing and maintain distance when all I want. He stopped, jaw clenched. What do you want, Theodore? The air between us crackled with tension. Something I can't have, he said finally. Something that wouldn't be fair to you, or appropriate, or... What if I want it too? The words escaped before I could stop them. But I didn't take them back. Theodore closed his eyes. Scarlett, don't. Don't what? Don't admit that these past 2 weeks have been the happiest I've been in years? Don't acknowledge that watching you with Emma makes me believe in second chances? Don't make me choose between what I want and what's right. What if they're the same thing? We stared at each other across an impossible distance of 12 feet that felt like miles. Then his phone rang. The spell broke. He answered it, his face going pale. When? How bad? I'll be right there. He hung up, grabbed his jacket. My mother, she's had a fall. I need to go to Boston. I'll be gone at least 3 days. Is she okay? Broken hip, surgery tomorrow. He was already moving toward the door, then stopped. Take care of Emma, please. Of course, Theodore. But he was gone, leaving me standing in his office with 1,000 unspoken words hanging in the air. And somehow, I knew that when he came back, nothing would ever be the same. Theodore had been gone for 2 days and Emma was wilting like a flower without sun. He didn't even say goodbye properly, she said on the second morning, pushing her breakfast around her plate. He just left, like always. He was worried about your grandmother, sweetie. Sometimes emergencies don't leave time for proper goodbyes. There's always an emergency, always a reason he has to go or can't stay or is too busy. She looked up at me with those heartbreaking eyes. Scarlett, do you think he left because of me? Because I got sick and disappointed him? Emma, no. I heard you fighting, in the hospital. You said he was suffocating me with his fear. Maybe he realized I'm too much trouble and he's happier away from me. I pulled her into my arms, this brave little girl who'd learned to blame herself for her father's trauma. Listen to me. Your father loves you more than anything in this world. He's stuck. And sometimes people who are stuck make bad choices because they're scared of making worse ones. Were you scared? After your mom died? I'd told Emma about my mother during one of our garden sessions. She'd asked why I became a nurse, and the truth had spilled out. Terrified, every day. I was scared my dad would die too, that everyone I loved would leave. But you know what I learned? What? That fear is just love with nowhere to go. Your dad's fear isn't about you being trouble. It's about you being everything and him being terrified of losing everything again. Emma was quiet for a long moment. I wish he'd just tell me that, instead of making rules and leaving. Me too, sweetheart, me too. That afternoon, while Emma was with Miss Pemberton, Theodore finally called. Not me, Mrs. Crawford, asking about Emma's vitals, her schedule, whether she'd eaten properly. Everything clinical, nothing personal. He didn't want to talk to me? I asked, hating how much that hurt. Mrs. Crawford gave me a knowing look. Mr. Blackwell is very good at running from things that scare him. And Miss Hayes, you scare him more than he's willing to admit. I'm just the nurse. Are you? She raised an eyebrow. Because I've worked for this family for 15 years. I watched him fall in love with Miss Catherine, and I'm watching it happen again, whether either of you wants to admit it or not. My heart stuttered. We're not. Denial doesn't change truth, dear. But a word of advice? Mr. Blackwell is a good man buried under a mountain of grief and guilt. He'll fight what he feels because he thinks he doesn't deserve happiness. So if you want him, you'll have to fight for him. Fight harder than he fights against himself. Before I could process that bombshell, my phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Hayes? This is Margaret Blackwell, Theodore's mother. Oh, God. Mrs. Blackwell, how are you feeling? Theodore said. I'm fine. Grumpy and immobile, but fine. I'm calling about my son. Her voice was sharp, intelligent. He's been here for 2 days, working 16-hour days from my hospital room, barely eating, not sleeping, and every time I ask what's wrong, he says nothing. But I know my boy. Something's eating him alive. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm not sure I'm the right person. You're exactly the right person. He talks about you. My breath caught. He does? Not directly, but he mentions Emma's nurse constantly. How good you are with her. How Emma laughs now. How the house feels different. She paused. And yesterday when he thought I was sleeping, I heard him on the phone with his therapist, talking about someone who makes him want things he thought he'd never want again. Who makes him feel guilty for moving forward, who terrifies him because he can't control what he feels. Tears pricked my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you won't give up on him. Say you'll be patient while he works through his mess. Say you'll be there when he finally gets his head out of his ass and realizes what's right in front of him. Her voice softened. Theodore loved my daughter-in-law deeply. Catherine was sunshine and laughter and life. But she's gone, and she'd be furious if she knew he was using her memory as an excuse to stop living. How do you know? About me, I mean. That I couldn't finish. Because I hear it in your voice. The way you say his name. The way you're crying right now. She sighed. Love is rare and precious, Miss Hayes. Fight for it. After we hung up, I sat in the conservatory, Emma's laughter drifting from her lesson, and let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down. The hope, the fear, the impossible longing for a future I had no business imagining. I loved him. God help me, I loved Theodore Blackwell, his broken edges and his fierce devotion and the way he tried so hard to do right even when he got it wrong. I loved his rare smiles and his terrible jokes and the way he looked at Emma like she hung the stars. And I had no idea what to do about it. That night, Emma's fever spiked again. Nothing serious, just her body fighting off the last of the virus. But her temperature hit 101 and she started crying, asking for her father. I tried calling Theodore. Voicemail. Texted. No response. Called the hospital. They said he'd left hours ago. Called his cell again. Nothing. Emma's sobs grew worse. He doesn't want to talk to me. I knew it. I knew I was too much trouble. Emma, that's not true. Then where is he? Why won't he answer? I had no answer. So I did the only thing I could. I climbed into bed with her, held her while she cried, sang the lullabies my mother used to sing to me, and prayed that Theodore Blackwell would pull his head out of his ass before he permanently broke his daughter's heart. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Theodore. I extracted myself from Emma's sleeping form and answered in the hallway. Where have you been? I whispered harshly. Emma needed you. She was crying for you and you were just... What? Ignoring us? I was on a plane. His voice was rough. My phone died. I'm pulling up to the house now. Is she okay? Mrs. Crawford said fever. She's fine now, asleep. But Theodore, she thought you were avoiding her. She thought... My voice cracked. She thought she'd driven you away. Silence. Then, I'm coming up. No. She's sleeping. You'll wake her. Scarlett, I need to see my daughter. What you need is to figure out what you're doing. Because this, leaving, not communicating, running every time things get hard, it's destroying her. And I can't... The words caught in my throat. I can't watch you break that little girl's heart. You think I don't know that? His voice was anguished. You think I don't see what I'm doing? I'm terrified, Scarlett. Of Emma getting sick. Of losing control, of... He stopped. Of what? Of you. The admission was barely a whisper. Of how you make me feel. Of wanting something I have no right to want. My heart was hammering. Theodore, I'm coming up. Not to Emma's room, to yours. We need to talk, really talk, no more running. He hung up before I could respond. 3 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Theodore Blackwell standing in my doorway looking wrecked. Tie gone, shirt wrinkled, hair a mess, exhaustion, and something raw and desperate in his eyes. I can't do this anymore, he said. I can't pretend you're just Emma's nurse. I can't pretend I don't count the minutes until I see you each day. I can't pretend that when I'm away, you're all I think about. I couldn't breathe. Theodore, let me finish, please. He stepped inside, closed the door. In Boston, my mother said something. She said that Catherine would hate knowing I was using her memory as a cage. That loving someone who's gone doesn't mean I can't love someone who's here. And she's right. I know she's right. But Scarlett, I'm so scared. Of what? Of everything. Of being happy and having it ripped away again. Of dragging you into my mess. Of not being enough. Of being too much. Of, his voice broke, of loving you and losing you. The world stopped. You love me? Theodore looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. I'm trying so hard not to. But yes, God help me, yes. I closed the distance between us, my hands finding his face. Then stop trying. Stop fighting. Stop running. Scarlett, you deserve someone whole, someone who isn't broken. I deserve someone who sees me, who fights for what matters, who loves fiercely even when it's terrifying. I looked into those storm-gray eyes. I deserve you, Theodore Blackwell, and you deserve happiness, we both do. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to let myself feel this without the fear destroying it. Then we figure it out together. Small steps, remember? You taught me that. I smiled through my tears. I love you too, you impossible, frustrating, beautiful man. And I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, he just stared at me, like he couldn't believe this was real. Then he kissed me, desperate and gentle and full of 2 years of locked-away longing, and I kissed him back, pouring everything I felt into it. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to mess this up, he warned. Probably. I will too. Emma has to come first. Always. This is going to be complicated. Everything worth having is. He laughed, soft and wondering. How did I get this lucky? You ordered pizza and showed up. That's all it took. We stood there holding each other, and for the first time since I'd met him, Theodore Blackwell looked at peace. Tomorrow would bring complications, conversations with Emma, questions about boundaries, fears to work through. But tonight we had this, and it was enough. I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window and the smell of pancakes. For a blissful moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory crashed back. Theodore's confession, his kiss, the way he'd held me like I was something precious, and my heart did a ridiculous little flip. He loved me. Theodore Blackwell loved me. I got dressed quickly, my reflection in the mirror showing someone I barely recognized, eyes bright, cheeks flushed, a smile I couldn't suppress. I looked like someone who'd been kissed senseless by the man she loved. Because that's exactly what I was. The kitchen was chaos in the best way. Theodore stood at the stove, spatula in hand, his shirt sleeves rolled up, looking adorably domestic and completely out of his element. Emma sat at the counter, giggling at something he'd said, her fever completely gone. Scarlett, Emma lit up when she saw me. Father's making pancakes. They're a little burned, but he says that's called caramelized, and we should pretend they're fancy. Theodore turned, and the look he gave me, warm, open, slightly sheepish, made my knees weak. Good morning, he said softly. Morning. I couldn't stop smiling like an idiot. Emma looked between us, her expression shifting from confused to delighted. Something's different. What do you mean? I asked, probably too quickly. You're both being weird. Happy weird. She narrowed her eyes. Did something happen? Theodore and I exchanged glances. We hadn't discussed this. How to tell Emma, when to tell her, what to even call whatever this was between us. Actually, Theodore said, setting down the spatula and coming around the counter. There's something we need to talk about. Emma, you know how much Scarlett means to both of us, right? Emma nodded, suddenly serious. She's my favorite person, besides you, Father. Well, she's become my favorite person too, in a different way. He was fumbling this beautifully. What I mean is, Father likes Scarlett, Emma announced. Likes her, with kissing and stuff. I choked on air. Theodore went red. How did you? I'm 7, not stupid. You look at her the way Prince Philip looks at Aurora in Sleeping Beauty. And you smile more when she's around. And yesterday Mrs. Crawford told Cook that it was about time Mr. Blackwell pulled his head out of his posterior. She looked proud of herself. I had to look up posterior in the dictionary. Theodore sat down heavily. I'm going to have a talk with Mrs. Crawford. So are you guys boyfriend-girlfriend now? Emma asked, swinging her legs excitedly. Does this mean Scarlett will stay forever? Can I be the flower girl at your wedding? Emma, slow down, I laughed, moving to sit beside her. Your dad and I, we care about each other, but we're taking things slow. Nothing has to change right away. But you're not leaving? Emma's voice went small. Please don't leave. The other nurses always left. Theodore reached across and took her hand. Scarlett isn't going anywhere, right? He looked at me and I saw the vulnerability there, the fear that I'd realize what I'd signed up for and bolt. I'm not going anywhere, I promised, taking Emma's other hand. You're stuck with me, kiddo. Emma launched herself at both of us, arms around our necks, and we ended up in a tangled hug that felt like family, like home. The perfect moment lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then the doorbell rang. Mrs. Crawford appeared, looking flustered. Mr. Blackwell, there's a situation at the door. Before Theodore could respond, a woman swept into the kitchen like a hurricane in Chanel. She was about 50, blonde, impeccably dressed, and radiating the kind of confidence that came from old money and newer plastic surgery. Theodore, darling. She air-kissed near his cheeks. I came as soon as I heard about Margaret. How is she? And why haven't you returned my calls? Theodore's jaw tightened. Vivian, this isn't a good time. Nonsense, it's a perfect time. I brought bagels from that place you love, and she stopped, noticing Emma and me. Oh, you have staff here? The way she said staff made it clear what she thought of us. This is Scarlett Hayes, Emma's nurse, Theodore said stiffly. Scarlett, this is Vivian Ashford, Catherine's sister. Oh no. Emma had gone rigid beside me. I put a protective arm around her. Vivian's smile was sharp. A nurse. How practical. Emma, darling, you look pale. Are you eating enough? Theodore, I've told you she needs to see Dr. Morrison. He's the best pediatric cardiologist in the country. She has an excellent doctor, Theodore said. In Boston, yes. But surely you should get a second opinion. Catherine would want... Don't. Theodore's voice was cold. Don't tell me what Catherine would want. Vivian's eyes filled with tears, the practiced kind. I'm just trying to help. You know how much Catherine loved Emma. How much she'd want her to have the best care, not some budget nurse from an agency. Excuse me? I stood up, anger flaring. I'm a highly qualified pediatric nurse with 8 years of experience. Emma is thriving. Emma is sick, Vivian cut me off. She'll always be sick. And someone like you, no offense, can't possibly understand the complexities of... Mrs. Ashford, I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. With all due respect, I understand Emma's condition perfectly. I've read every medical file, consulted with her doctors, and spent the past month actually caring for her. What I don't understand is why you're here insulting me in front of a 7-year-old child who doesn't need this drama. Vivian's face went red. Theodore, are you going to let the help speak to me this way? Scarlett isn't the help, Theodore said quietly. She's... He looked at me, and I saw the decision crystallize in his eyes. She's important to me, to us, and I'd appreciate if you'd treat her with respect. Important? Vivian's voice rose. Catherine's been gone barely 2 years and you've already replaced her with the nurse? That's enough. Theodore's voice was steel. You need to leave. I'm Emma's aunt. I have a right. You have no rights here. You visit twice a year, send expensive gifts, and act like that makes you family. Scarlett sees Emma every day. She knows her favorite constellation, her fears, her dreams. She's done more for my daughter in 1 month than you've done in 2 years. Vivian grabbed her purse, eyes blazing. This is a mistake, Theodore. Catherine would be ashamed. When this little arrangement falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. She swept out as dramatically as she'd entered. The silence she left behind was deafening. Emma burst into tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry she said those things. I'm sorry I caused so much trouble. Hey, no. I pulled her close. None of this is your fault. Your aunt is just complicated. She's mean, Emma sobbed. And she's right. Everyone leaves. Mother left. All the other nurses left. And now you'll leave too because we're too much trouble. Emma, look at me. Theodore knelt in front of her, taking her face in his hands. Scarlett is not leaving. I'm not letting her leave. Do you understand? Yes, we're complicated. Yes, we have challenges. But we also have something worth fighting for. And I'm done running from that. He looked up at me over Emma's head, and I saw the question in his eyes. I knelt down too, joining them. Your dad's right. I'm not going anywhere. You want to know why? Emma nodded, tears still streaming. Because you two are the best thing that's ever happened to me. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you make me want to be better. And yeah, it's complicated and unconventional and probably a little crazy. But the best things always are. Really? Emma's voice was so small, so hopeful. Really? Plus, someone has to make sure your dad doesn't burn down the kitchen trying to make pancakes. Emma laughed through her tears. Theodore pulled us both into a hug, and we stayed there on the kitchen floor, holding onto each other like a life raft in a storm. Mrs. Crawford cleared her throat from the doorway. The pancakes are definitely burning now, sir. Let them burn, Theodore said. We have more important things to focus on. Later, after Emma had been coaxed into watching a movie, Theodore found me in the conservatory. I'm sorry about Vivian, he said. She's difficult. She never approved of Catherine marrying me. Thought I was too serious, too boring. And after Catherine died, she blamed me. Said I should have caught it earlier, should have done more. Is that why you're so obsessed with Emma's health? Because Vivian blamed you? Partly. Mostly because she was right. I should have seen the signs with Catherine. Should have insisted on more tests earlier. By the time we caught it, it was too late. And I'll live with that guilt forever. He took my hand. But Scarlett, what I said in there, I meant it. You're not a replacement for Catherine. You're something entirely different. Something I didn't know I needed. What am I? I asked softly. Hope, he said simply. Your hope that life can be good again. That Emma can be happy. That I can love and be loved without it ending in loss. He pulled me closer. I know we're moving fast. I know there are complications. Your job, Emma, the world's opinion. But I don't care. I want this. I want you. I want us. So do I whispered. But Theodore, I can't be Emma's nurse anymore. Not if we're together. It's an ethical issue. Then we'll find another nurse for the medical stuff, and you can be. He smiled. What do you want to be? I thought about it. Part of the family. Just Scarlett, who happens to have medical training and who loves a certain stubborn CEO and his incredible daughter. I can work with that, he murmured, and kissed me softly. When we pulled apart, Emma was peeking around the doorframe, grinning like she'd won the lottery. I knew it, she crowed. Mrs. Crawford owes me $5. You bet on us? Theodore asked incredulously. Obviously. Now come on, there's a meteor shower tonight and we should watch it. All three of us, as a family. She said it so simply, so hopefully that my eyes filled with tears. As a family, Theodore agreed, looking at me. As a family, I echoed. And for the first time since I'd walked into this mansion, everything felt exactly right. 3 months later, I stood in what used to be the sterile white living room and barely recognized it. Emma's artwork covered one wall, a chaotic, beautiful explosion of color. Throw pillows that actually looked comfortable dotted the couches. Books lay scattered on the coffee table. A half-finished puzzle sprawled across the floor. The house finally looked lived in. Loved in. Scarlett, Emma called from upstairs. Father's tie is crooked again and he won't let me fix it. I laughed, heading up the stairs. In Emma's room, now painted a cheerful yellow with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, Theodore stood in front of the mirror, looking handsome and helpless in his tuxedo. I can do a Windsor knot in a boardroom, he grumbled. Why is this so impossible? Because you're nervous, I said, coming to fix it. It's just a gala, Theodore. You've done 100 of these. Not with you as my date. His eyes met mine in the mirror, warm and soft. Not with everyone knowing we're together. 3 months of dating had been a whirlwind. We'd taken it slow for Emma's sake. Separate bedrooms, appropriate boundaries, lots of family time. I'd officially resigned as Emma's nurse and started working part-time at the children's hospital while finishing my master's degree. A new nurse, Patricia, came 3 times a week to check Emma's vitals. But mostly Emma was just a kid. A healthy, happy, wonderfully normal kid. Theodore had started therapy. Real therapy, not just phone consultations. He was learning to manage his anxiety, to distinguish between real danger and catastrophic thinking. He still had bad days, days when he checked on Emma too many times or spiraled into fear. But he was trying. And that's all I'd ever asked. You look beautiful, Emma sighed, flopping on her bed. She wore a purple dress with tulle and sparkles, her hair in elaborate braids courtesy of Mrs. Crawford's hidden talents. Like a princess. Father, doesn't she look like a princess? Theodore turned me to face him, his hands gentle on my waist. She looks like everything. I'd chosen a deep emerald dress, simple and elegant, because Theodore had once mentioned green was his favorite color. The way he was looking at me now made the shopping trip worth every penny. You're not so bad yourself, I murmured. Gross, Emma announced. You guys are always doing the googly eyes thing. Can we go? Grandmother Margaret is meeting us there, and she promised to teach me how to identify which rich people are fake nice versus real nice. Your grandmother is a terrible influence, Theodore said, but he was smiling. Margaret Blackwell had recovered beautifully from her hip surgery and had become my unexpected ally. She called weekly to check on her boys, as she called Theodore and Emma, and to give me unsolicited but surprisingly helpful advice about managing Theodore's stubbornness. The gala was a charity event for pediatric cardiac research, Theodore's way of turning his pain into purpose. He'd donated a staggering amount and convinced half of Boston's elite to do the same. Emma had even made a speech at the planning committee, talking about her surgeries and her recovery, about how research had saved her life. There hadn't been a dry eye in the room. The ballroom was stunning, all crystal chandeliers and flowing champagne and people in clothes that cost more than my first car. I felt Theodore tense beside me as we entered, his hand tightening on mine. Remember, I whispered. We're here for Emma, for the kids who need the same help she got. Nothing else matters. He nodded, relaxing slightly. When did you become the wise one? I've always been wise. You were just too stubborn to notice. Emma held Theodore's other hand, her eyes wide at all the glamour. Is that Senator Morrison? And is that the actress from that superhero movie? Yes and yes, Theodore confirmed. Want to meet them? Can I? Emma breathed. Watching Theodore introduce Emma to various celebrities and politicians, seeing her light up with confidence, my heart swelled. This was the Theodore the world didn't see. The devoted father, the man who'd memorized every constellation so he could talk to his daughter about stars, the person who'd learned to make pancakes badly because Emma asked him to. Scarlett Hayes. A familiar voice made me turn. Vivian Ashford stood there, looking slightly less hostile than last time. Slightly. I hear congratulations are in order. Are they? I asked carefully. Emma's doing well. Theodore seems happy, less controlled. She looked pained, admitting it. I may have been premature in my judgment of you. It wasn't quite an apology, but from someone like Vivian, it was close. Emma loves you, I said gently. She talks about her Aunt Catherine all the time, about how her mother and you used to paint together, how you taught Catherine to drive. Those memories matter to her. You matter to her. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I lost my sister, and I was so angry at Theodore for moving on, for being happy when Catherine couldn't be. But you're right. Emma needs me to be her aunt, not her mother's grief-stricken ghost. Maybe we could have lunch sometime, you, me, and Emma. No drama, just family. She nodded slowly. I'd like that. And Scarlett, Take care of them. They're all I have left of Catherine. I will, I promise. Later, after the speeches and the dinner and the dancing, Theodore pulled me onto the balcony. The city sparkled below us and music drifted from inside. "Dance with me?" he asked. We were just dancing inside. That was for them. This is for us. He pulled me close, and we swayed to the distant music, wrapped in our own world. "Scarlett," he said softly, "these past 3 months have been the happiest of my life since Catherine died. You've brought color back into our lives. Joy. Hope. You've taught me that loving someone doesn't mean controlling them, that being a good father means letting go sometimes, that it's okay to be happy again. Theodore, let me finish." He stepped back, and my heart stopped because he was reaching into his pocket and then he was on one knee and oh my God. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. I know we should probably wait longer, be more sensible, think about optics and timing and all the things I usually obsess over. He opened a small velvet box revealing a ring, a simple band with emeralds and diamonds that caught the light like stars. But I've spent 2 years being sensible and scared and it got me nowhere. You taught me to take chances, to live. So I'm taking the biggest chance of my life. Tears were streaming down my face. "Theodore, Scarlett Hayes, will you marry me? Will you be Emma's stepmother and my partner and the person who reminds me that life is for living? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made us?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He stood and kissed me, sliding the ring onto my finger, and the world disappeared into that perfect moment. "Finally!" Emma's voice made us jump apart. She stood at the balcony door with Margaret, both of them grinning. "I told you he'd propose tonight, grandmother. You owe me $20. "You knew?" I asked, laughing through my tears. "Father asked my permission last week," Emma said proudly. I said yes, obviously. I also helped pick the ring. "Do you like it?" "I love it," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I love all of this. I love you both so much." "We love you too," Emma said. "Can I be the flower girl now? Because I've been practicing my walk and I'm really good." "Yes," Theodore and I said together. Margaret dabbed at her eyes. "Catherine would have loved you, dear. You've brought my boys back to life." As we stood there on that balcony, Theodore's arm around me, Emma chattering about wedding plans, Margaret beaming with joy, I thought about that rainy Monday morning 3 months ago when I'd almost said no to this job. I'd said yes because I needed the money. Because my car was dying and my bills were due and I had no other options. But the universe had other plans. It had brought me to a broken man and his hurting daughter. It had shown me that the coldest hearts can thaw with the right warmth. That love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, fighting through fear, and choosing each other every day. Theodore Blackwell had been a man of ice, locked in grief and terror. But ice melts, hearts heal. And sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with a simple yes. "What are you thinking about?" Theodore murmured. I looked at him. This impossible, wonderful man who'd fought his way back to happiness, and smiled. That I should have been suspicious when the agency called at 6 in the morning. And I'm so glad I wasn't. He kissed me again, soft and sweet and full of promise. While Emma cheered and Margaret laughed, and somewhere in the sky above us, the stars shone down on our beautifully imperfect, perfectly happy family. The frozen heart had finally, completely thawed, and it was warm enough for all of us. 18 months later, the garden was perfect, not the sterile, controlled perfection that once characterized the Blackwell mansion, but the chaotic, beautiful perfection of real life. White chairs scattered across the lawn, flowers in mismatched vases, Emma's drawings framed and hanging from the trees like art installations. I stood in the conservatory, adjusting my dress for the 100th time. It was simple, lace and silk, elegant without being fussy, chosen because Theodore had said it made me look like starlight. "Stop fidgeting," Margaret said, fixing my veil. "You look stunning." "What if I trip?" What if I forget my vows? What if you stop catastrophizing like my son and just enjoy your wedding day? She smiled. Scarlett, dear, you've already won. Theodore loves you. Emma adores you. The hard part is over. This is just the celebration. Emma burst in, her flower girl dress somehow already slightly wrinkled. Scarlett. Mrs. Crawford says it's time and father looks like he might faint, and I think that's romantic. I laughed, gathering my bouquet. Wildflowers and stars of Bethlehem, because Emma had insisted. How do I look? Like a princess, Emma said seriously. Like the princess who saves the kingdom and also knows CPR. That's oddly specific. You're oddly specific. Come on. The ceremony was small, just close friends and family. Patricia, Emma's nurse, who'd become a dear friend. My father, who'd flown in from California and already adored Theodore. Margaret dabbing at happy tears. Mrs. Crawford pretending she wasn't crying. Even Vivian, who'd slowly become part of our lives again, teaching Emma to paint just like she'd taught Catherine. And at the end of the aisle, looking at me like I was his entire world, stood Theodore Blackwell. He wasn't the man I'd met 18 months ago. That man had been locked away, frozen, barely surviving. This Theodore was alive, laugh lines around his eyes, genuine smiles, comfortable in his own happiness. Emma walked ahead of me, scattering petals with enthusiastic abandon, then took her place beside Theodore as his best person, because she'd insisted she couldn't choose between bridesmaid and groomsman. I walked down the aisle alone, by choice, because I wasn't being given away. I was choosing this life, this family, this beautiful, imperfect future. Theodore's eyes never left mine. Hi, I whispered when I reached him. Hi, he whispered back. You look like starlight? Like home. The ceremony was a blur of happy tears and laughter, and Emma sniffling loudly during the vows. When Theodore kissed me as his wife, Emma cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. At the reception, held right there in the garden, Emma gave a speech that brought down the house. When Scarlett came to our house, my father was sad and I was lonely and everything was white and boring, she said into the microphone, completely fearless. But Scarlett changed everything. She made father smile again. She taught me that having a heart condition doesn't mean I can't have adventures. She showed us both that love is braver than fear. She looked at us, her eyes shining. Scarlett isn't replacing my mother. My mother will always be my mother. But Scarlett is teaching me that hearts are big enough to hold lots of love. And I'm so happy she's officially my family now. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. As the sun set and fairy lights twinkled in the trees and our guests danced on the lawn, Theodore pulled me close. Mrs. Blackwell, he murmured. How does it feel? Perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. Though I might keep Hayes professionally, I don't care if you call yourself Scarlett the Magnificent. You're mine and I'm yours, and that's all that matters. He kissed my forehead. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. To the job, to the chaos, to me. For fighting for us when I was too scared to fight for myself. For loving Emma. For teaching me that ice melts and hearts heal and happiness is worth the risk. Always. I promised. Every single day I'll say yes to you. Emma ran up, tugging our hands. Come on. Grandmother says if we look at the telescope together and make a wish on the first star, it always comes true. I don't need wishes, Theodore said, looking at us both. I have everything I want. Make one anyway, Emma insisted. For luck. So we did. The three of us, looking up at the stars together, making silent wishes. Mine was simple. Let this happiness last. Let this love grow. Let us always find our way back to each other. And as Emma pointed out Cassiopeia, the queen who was never alone, and Theodore's hand tightened in mine, I knew my wish had already come true. We were a family, imperfect, unconventional, beautifully real. The frozen heart had thawed completely, and in its place bloomed something infinitely better. A love that would last a lifetime. The end.